My name is Margaret Ellison, and I am 63 years old. If you had met me a few years ago, you would have found me pruning roses behind the small cedar fence of our family home, humming old folk songs under my breath, thinking my life had finally settled into something calm. That home, a modest but warm craftsman I had worked decades to help pay off with my late husband, had become the anchor of my days. I believed it would be mine until the end of my story, a place where I could grow old surrounded by familiar light, by the memory of shared laughter, by the scent of the magnolia tree we planted the year he passed. But if life has taught me anything, it's that security has a way of slipping through your fingers the moment you stop watching closely. My son-in-law, Daniel, had been hovering more than usual. Polite on the surface, soft-spoken, always carrying the aura of a man rehearsing patience. And my daughter, Claire, once my confidante, had begun echoing his sentiments with a strange, hushed caution in her voice. They visited more. They lingered. They glanced at the framed mortgage documents in the hallway with an interest they tried to disguise as nostalgia. For months, they'd been nudging conversations about the future. Who would handle what? Where I should be living? Which responsibilities I ought to pass on? But polite concern had an undertone I had begun to feel without fully naming. Still, life moved in its small cycles. Morning tea. Afternoon walks. A book at night. I ignored the feeling as I trimmed the rose bushes and washed the teacups. I told myself I was imagining it, until one Sunday afternoon, I received a call that would unsettle everything I thought I knew about my own family. "Mom," Claire said, her voice smooth but carrying something underneath it. "Can you come over for dinner this Friday? We just want to talk about the house. There are some things Daniel thinks really need to be addressed." The house. The word sat oddly in my chest. I asked her what she meant, but she deflected. "Let's save it for dinner," she insisted. "It'll just be easier to explain in person." And though she tried to sound reassuring, I heard it. A small silence after her sentence. A silence shaped like decision, like conclusion, like something already decided. I hung up the phone and stared out the window for a long time. The magnolia tree was in bloom again, white petals drifting like slow snow. And beneath its branches, something in me shifted. A sense that the ground I stood on wasn't as steady as I had believed. I didn't know exactly what was coming, but I felt the tide turning. Felt the weight of an unseen wave gathering just beyond my sight. And by Friday evening, that wave would reveal itself completely. But before it did, I had already begun preparing. Even then, before a single word was spoken, I sensed that silence, and in that silence, something that felt very much like betrayal. As I set out my coat for the dinner I hadn't agreed to yet, a single thought pierced the quiet. Whatever they wanted with my house, I needed to be ready. And ready I became. I arrived at their house just before sunset. The sky was the color of low embers, and a faint spring wind tugged at my sleeves as I stepped up to their door. The moment Claire opened it, I knew something was orchestrated behind the scenes. Her smile was too tense, too practiced, and Daniel stood behind her with his arms crossed, not in hostility, but in expectation. We barely exchanged pleasantries before Daniel guided me to the dining table. 3 placemats. 1 folder. My stomach sank. The folder sat directly in front of my chair, its crisp edges aligned perfectly with the table's grain. It was the kind of placement people choose when they want to appear organized, professional, prepared. But all I felt was ambush. "Mom," Claire began, her hands folded tightly together, "we've been thinking about your future. About security. About making sure everything is handled in a responsible way." Daniel leaned forward. "It's really simple. Since we'll be the ones taking care of you as you get older, it just makes sense for the house to be transferred into my name now. That way we can protect it from emergencies. Taxes. Legal complications." He slid the folder toward me. A property transfer agreement. Already filled out. Only 1 signature line marked blank. Mine. My throat went dry. "You want me," I said slowly, "to sign my house over to you." "Not want," he corrected, pushing the pen toward me. "Need. It's what responsible families do. You're not getting any younger, Margaret." Claire winced at his tone, but she didn't contradict him. Instead, she whispered, "It really is for the best, Mom." The air thickened around me. I felt every heartbeat as if it echoed off the walls. I looked at the document. The clauses. The traps. The subtle legal phrasing clearly prepared by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. If I signed that paper, I would lose the only thing I had left from my marriage. The only stability I had. My home. Daniel cleared his throat. It's not like you're being kicked out. You'll still be able to stay there. But officially speaking, the property should belong to family that's capable. You understand. Capable. Their words pierced deeper than I let them see. I folded my hands on the table. Calm. Very calm. You learn with age the power of stillness. And in that stillness, I saw everything clearly. This wasn't concern. This wasn't family protection. It was greed dressed in polite vocabulary. And in that moment, something inside me hardened, not into anger, but into resolve. I closed the folder gently. I appreciate you thinking of my future, I said. Truly. But I don't sign anything without reading it thoroughly. Daniel exhaled impatiently. We've already gone over everything. It's standard. It's just a formality. I'll take it home, I said firmly. And I'll make my decision. Claire tried to interject, but I stood before she could. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. I left before dessert, before the conversation could spiral into pleading or pressure. When I stepped into the cold night air, I took a deep breath. They thought they had caught me unprepared. But they were wrong. Very wrong. Because while they believed they had the upper hand, they didn't know something crucial. I had already begun my own quiet investigation. And what I'd uncover would shift the balance entirely. I drove home with the folder resting on the passenger seat like a trespasser in my car. The night pressed against the windows, and with each passing streetlight, my mind drifted back through the years. Back to the moments that, in hindsight, should have warned me. When Claire married Daniel, I was hopeful. He appeared attentive, ambitious, polite. But there was a sheen to him, like a man always scanning for opportunity. Over time, I saw how he steered conversations, how he framed decisions as though they were everyone's idea but solidified his own interests. Still, Claire loved him, and I wanted her to be happy. After my husband passed, they stepped in with concern that felt genuine then. Helping around the house, handling paperwork, offering to manage repairs. But I noticed a subtle shift. Daniel didn't offer help so much as insert himself into the spaces where decisions were made. And Claire often followed his lead, her confidence drifting toward his opinions more each year. Yet I ignored it. People grieve differently, I told myself. Families evolve. But then came the suggestions. The comments about my large house for one person. The repeated questioning about whether I wanted to deal with maintenance at my age. Claire began gently proposing the idea of me moving in with them someday. Daniel suggested converting the spare bedroom in their home into my future space. It had felt thoughtful at the time. Now, revisiting those moments with clarity, they appeared like small stones laid to form a path he was guiding me down without my noticing. As I neared my driveway, I remembered my husband's voice, steady, practical, wise. We built this home together from nothing. Every tile, every coat of paint, every plant in the yard held pieces of us. He had told me once, "This house is security, Maggie. Whatever happens in life, keep something that is yours." I parked and remained in the car a moment, gripping the steering wheel. Something had shifted in the family dynamic, subtly over years, until I was seen not as a person but as an asset. But people who underestimate older women forget something important. We've lived long enough to recognize patterns. Long enough to know when something precious is in danger. And long enough to protect what's ours. I brought the folder inside, set it on the kitchen table, and made tea. Steam curled toward the ceiling as I flipped through the pages. Each paragraph confirmed what I already suspected. Signing this would grant Daniel complete ownership. He could sell it, mortgage it, evict me if he felt the need. Nothing protected me. Nothing protected my autonomy. And worst of all, they had expected me to sign it without question. That expectation revealed everything about their motives. This wasn't about my safety. It was about acquisition. The sadness came first. A heavy, quiet sorrow that my own daughter believed this was acceptable. But beneath it, anger emerged. Not loud, but steady. Controlled. Focused. By the time I finished my tea, the sadness had settled into determination. I knew what I had to do. Not revenge in the cruel sense, but protection. Justice. Clarity. They wanted my signature. They would get one. Just not the one they expected. And as I laid the folder aside, a quiet plan began forming. One I would carry out carefully, patiently, and with absolute precision. The next morning, I called my old friend and attorney, Louise. We'd known each other since college, and though she was partially retired, she still handled certain cases, especially for friends in need. She answered on the second ring. "Margaret? It's been a while. I need your help," I said simply. Within an hour, she was sitting at my kitchen table, her reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose as she flipped through the documents Daniel had prepared. With each page, her eyebrows climbed a little higher. "Ah," she murmured, "so this is what they're up to." "Am I overreacting?" I asked. She closed the folder with a soft thud. "No, you're being targeted." Hearing it stated plainly made my chest tighten, but it also validated everything I had sensed. Louise explained the legal implications, the traps hidden in the language, the potential consequences if I had signed. They were worse than I imagined. "This document is structured to transfer full ownership immediately and irrevocably," she said. "You'd become a tenant at the mercy of your son-in-law." I exhaled slowly. "What can I do?" "You can secure your house properly. And quietly." We spent the next several hours discussing options. Because the home had been left entirely in my name after my husband's passing, I had full authority to make any decisions regarding its title. Louise recommended transferring the property into a protected living trust, with me as trustee and beneficiary. That way, no one could manipulate me into signing it away again, intentionally or by deception. By late afternoon, the paperwork was prepared. I signed every line with steady hands. The house, legally and irrevocably, was now under my sole, protected control. Louise leaned back, satisfied. "They can't touch it now. Even if you wanted to give it away, you couldn't without significant legal safeguards." A quiet weight lifted off my shoulders. But the investigation wasn't finished yet. I wanted to understand how far Daniel and Claire had gone, whether this was their idea alone or something they had been coached into. So I did what any calm, determined woman my age would do. I checked my voicemail archive. I saved every text. I reviewed earlier conversations, subtle hints, abrupt behavior changes. I pieced together a slow, steady pattern of manipulation. And as I connected the dots, something became clear. They had been planning this for months, maybe longer. Later that evening, I took a slow walk through my garden. The magnolia tree rustled softly above me, and I thought of my husband again. How fiercely he had protected our family, how deeply he had valued integrity. I would honor that, not by lashing out, but by letting the truth reveal itself. And soon it would, because they had invited me to dinner again the next night, expecting me to return with their papers signed. I would return, yes, but I wouldn't be bringing what they wanted. Instead, I would bring the truth. And the moment they opened that folder, everything would change. The next evening arrived heavy with anticipation. I carried the folder they had given me, though its contents were no longer the same. Inside was a single sheet from Louise confirming the house had been transferred into a protected trust, signed and notarized. The calmness I felt surprised even me. There's a certain power in truth, in preparation, in knowing you've protected yourself fully. The fear dissolves. What remains is clarity. When I walked into their house, Claire rushed toward me. "Mom, thank you for coming. We're so glad you're willing to talk about this again." Daniel hovered behind her with the smug confidence of a man who believes he's already won. "Let's not drag this out," he said. "Do you have the papers?" I held up the folder. "I do." His eyes lit with victory far too early. We sat at the same table as before. Same placemats. Same chairs. Same scripts they had rehearsed in their minds. Daniel opened the folder with a flourish, only for his face to freeze. What is this?" Claire leaned over his shoulder. "Mom, where are the transfer forms?" I folded my hands, slow and steady. I reviewed them. Then I consulted an attorney. The color drained from Daniel's face. "You, what attorney?" "A very good one," I said. She pointed out the flaws in what you asked me to sign. Serious flaws. Daniel's jaw clenched. "We were trying to help you. Protect you. By removing my name from the home I paid for? The home your father-in-law and I built together? The home you intended to control." My voice stayed level, calm enough to make them shift uncomfortably. Claire's eyes filled with uncertainty. "Mom, we just wanted to make sure nothing happened to the house if I ever became too old to say no?" I asked softly. She blinked hard. I continued. "I've since transferred the property into a protected trust. I am the sole trustee, sole beneficiary. No one can tamper with it. Not even me without proper safeguards." Daniel's mouth fell open. "You transferred it? Without telling us?" I held his gaze. "You asked me to give away everything I have. I simply ensured it remained safe." The silence that followed was cold and thick, like winter iron. Claire's voice cracked. "Mom, we were just trying to plan for the future." "You were trying to plan your future. I said gently. Not mine. Daniel shoved the folder away. This is ridiculous. You're making a big mistake. The trust can be overturned. No, I said. It can't. He stared at me, almost calculating. But something in my expression must have told him I wasn't bending. The truth now lay bare on the table between us. What they had intended wasn't protection. It was acquisition, wrapped in a veneer of concern. And now that the truth had surfaced, the confrontation was unavoidable. But I wasn't finished yet. Because the real conversation, the one I had rehearsed in my mind, the one steady with truth and resolve, was still to come. Daniel recovered first. He straightened his posture, puffed up slightly, and tried to regain control of the room. Margaret, you're being dramatic. This is why we needed the house handled responsibly. You're letting paranoia cloud good judgment. I looked at him calmly. I've lived 6 decades. I know the difference between paranoia and intuition. And I know when someone is trying to corner me. Claire looked between us, torn. Mom, please don't make this more tense than it needs to be. We love you. We were trying to help. I turned toward her. Claire, darling, I believe you think that. I truly do. But love doesn't manipulate. And it doesn't hide intentions in paperwork. Her face reddened with shame or recognition. I couldn't tell which. Daniel took a step closer to the table. You're blowing this out of proportion. We were looking out for you financially. If something happened to you tomorrow, the house would get stuck in probate. Do you want the state to take everything? I slid a different document out of my purse. Here, I said. This is the updated estate plan Louise helped me prepare. He snatched it, scanned it, and his forehead wrinkled. Your trust bypasses probate? Yes. And you set up your medical proxy? Yes. And a financial power of attorney? Yes. He tossed it onto the table, frustrated. So you're saying you don't need us? I'm saying, I replied evenly, that any help I accept must be freely given, not coerced. Claire covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes were glassy, reflecting conflict and guilt. Mom, did you really think we would hurt you? I shook my head gently. No. I think you allowed someone else's vision of convenience to overshadow what was right. Daniel stiffened. Meaning me? Yes, I said softly. Meaning you. He scoffed. You always resented me. No, I said with undeniable calm. I distrusted how you behaved when you thought no one was watching. Claire stood abruptly. Daniel, maybe we should slow down. But Daniel's temper had surfaced. You're ruining a perfectly sensible plan, he snapped at me, and dragging Claire into unnecessary drama. I rose slowly, letting my silence settle over him before I spoke. Do not speak to me about unnecessary drama while holding a document that would have stripped me of my home. He froze. The room was still. Then I leaned closer, steady as stone. If you ever present me with paperwork like that again, I won't just walk away. I will take steps that ensure you never have access to any part of my estate. That includes Claire's inheritance. Claire gasped softly. Mom, I softened my voice. I love you, sweetheart. But love cannot survive if it is used as leverage. Daniel looked away, seething quietly. The conversation was no longer about property. It was about integrity. And the consequences of betraying it. The aftermath wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, strained, unavoidable. Claire called me 3 days later. Her voice trembled the way it had when she was a child caught between truth and loyalty. Mom, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't realize. I didn't see what Daniel was pushing for. I thought it was about safety. I didn't want to believe he would do something driven by money. I listened without interruption. She continued. We've been fighting ever since that night. He says you misjudged him. But I can't ignore how fast he wanted your signature. And how little he wanted me to read it, I added gently. Yes, she said, voice breaking. Their marriage didn't collapse, but fissures formed, ones they would have to address on their own. The truth has a way of forcing people to face themselves, whether they want to or not. As for me, I found peace in small places. Morning tea on the porch. Evening walks beneath the magnolia tree. The house felt different. Safer, steadier, more wholly mine than it had in years. A few weeks later, Daniel visited me alone. He stood stiffly on the porch, holding a small box of pastries, as if store-bought sweetness could erase intentional harm. I want to apologize, he said. It was rehearsed, but not entirely hollow. I shouldn't have pushed you, he continued. I saw an opportunity and I justified it to myself as planning for the future. But it wasn't fair. And it wasn't right. I nodded. Thank you for saying that. He hesitated, then met my eyes. We're trying to rebuild things. Claire and I. And I want you to trust me again someday. I didn't promise. Trust is rebuilt in actions, not apologies. But I opened the door a fraction. Time will decide. He nodded, accepting the boundary. In the months that followed, something rare happened: accountability. Daniel attended financial counseling to address his fixation on control. Claire grew more assertive, more aware of her own voice. Our relationship, though bruised, began to heal slowly, cautiously. But they never again asked for anything regarding the house. Because they knew I had protected it completely. And they knew they had underestimated me. Now, at 63, I sit on my porch each morning with a calm heart. The magnolia tree sways softly above me, scattering pale petals across the lawn like quiet reminders of things that endure. What happened with my daughter and son-in-law changed me. Not into someone hardened, but someone awakened. There's a difference. I learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're guardians. And enforcing them isn't unkind. It is necessary. I learned that family can love us deeply and still make choices driven by fear or greed. And that addressing those choices calmly, truthfully, and firmly is an act of love in itself. Most of all, I learned this: you are never too old to defend your autonomy, to educate yourself, to protect what you've built, and to stand your ground when others try to move your lines. My revenge wasn't dramatic. I didn't yell or threaten or punish. I simply used truth, preparation, and calm intelligence. And that was enough. As for Claire, we've rebuilt something more honest than before. As for Daniel, well, trust is a long road. But even he has softened, humbled by the consequences of his choices. The house is safe. My independence is safe. And the peace I feel now is deeper than the fear that once threatened it. Before all of this, I never imagined I'd need to defend my own home from people I loved. But life has a way of teaching us when to stand quietly, and when to stand firmly. If you're listening to my story, I hope you remember this. Protect what matters. Question what feels wrong. And if someone pressures you into choices that don't sit right, step back, take a breath, and trust your instincts. They are wiser than you think. Tell me, have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you love? I'd be honored to hear your story.